And over 50 House Republicans are calling on Biden to secure the border. Patrol agents report a significant increase in illegal entry attempts and arrests, at numbers they haven't seen since the 2019 immigration crisis. NTD's Melina Weiskup gives us more details about the situation at the southern border.
In a letter, over 50 House Republicans urging the president to not let his ideology blind him from the importance of border security. They're warning Biden of the rise in illegal migration. Jen Psaki discourages migrants from coming to the border right now.
Now is not the time to come, and the vast majority of people will be turned away. Asylum processes at the border will not occur immediately, will take time to implement.
But an influx has already started. A border agent tells us they've already made over 30,000 arrests since October.
And to give you an idea of what that means, over this time last year, that is up almost 150%. Across the entire southwest border, we're currently apprehending anywhere from 3,000 to 3,500 people every 24 hours.
Chief Landrum also says they've seen a 337% increase in people found in stash houses. The lawmakers claim that Biden's recent executive orders on immigration have communicated that the U.S. border is open.
We thought Joe Biden was giving this opportunity for people to migrate and help their families get ahead, and that's what we were doing. Because in our countries, the hurricanes, COVID, Hurricane Eta, Hurricane Iota affected us greatly in Honduras.
Many migrants have innocent motives for coming to the U.S., like the hope for a better future. Chief Landrum urges them to enter at the legal ports because illegal entry attempts have become increasingly more dangerous.
We are seeing an increase in assaults on federal agents, so people are becoming more resistant. They're not just willingly complying with agents' direction whenever they're actually in the field.
And a significant 233% increase in weapon seizures. The good news, this rise in weaponry and federal assaults rarely makes its way into the Loreto community, which is mainly Hispanic and has seen a 55% decrease in crime since last year.
This year, we have a similar pattern of a reduction in crime, and so we continue to have a very good crime rate. But that's thanks in large part to our officers who are out on patrol, our investigators who are following up these cases, and our collaborations with other law enforcement agencies.
The officer says the majority of transnational gangs like MS-13 usually don't stay in their community, but pass through to other parts of the U.S. GOP lawmakers claim Biden's immigration policy alone encourages violent cartels and puts other migrants in danger.
But when somebody puts themselves into the situation of being smuggled from their home city all the way through to their final destination city, when they do that, along the way, the possibility of that transitioning from just human smuggling to human trafficking increases.
That's why the GOP lawmakers are calling on Biden's Secretary of Homeland Security to give immediate immigration-related briefings to all House members. Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
The Biden administration is drawing backlash for re-engaging with the United Nations Human Rights Council. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more on that.
The Biden administration is facing criticism over its decisions to rejoin the United Nations Human Rights Council. The Trump administration withdrew from the council in 2018, citing that some of the worst human rights abusers or council members, like China, Cuba, and Venezuela. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken slammed the 2018 decision on Monday. He acknowledged the council is a flawed body in need of reform, but said Biden instructed the State Department to re-engage with the council. An observer in the council can submit draft resolutions, but does not have voting rights. Senator Marco Rubio from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee also criticized the decision. He said the council, quote, has become a place for despotic regimes to come together and receive international cover to continue to commit their horrific abuses. In January, then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo designated the Chinese regime's persecution of the Uyghur minority in China's Xinjiang region as genocide. Senator Rick Scott also said the U.S. should, quote, reject engaging with an organization that turns a blind eye to genocide. Last week, 45 Republican House lawmakers sent a letter to Biden asking him not to rejoin the council. They reasoned it hasn't adopted any resolutions condemning countries like China and Cuba between 2006 and 2019. They say the Trump administration was right to withdraw because the U.S.'s participation has not led to any meaningful reforms. Now we turn to President Biden's pick for the country's leading intelligence agency, the CIA. The president has tapped William Burns to lead the agency, and media reports are bringing his ties to Communist China into the spotlight. These reports focus mainly on a trip to China and donations from a man that's part of Beijing's influence organs. Burns is the president of a foreign policy think tank called the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. In 2019, Burns invited a group of congressional staffers on a trip to Beijing. There, the staffers met with a princeling, a foreign ministry official, and some academics. Princelings are the children of high-ranking Chinese Communist Party or CCP officials. Burns' organization paid for part of the trip expenses. The princeling in question is called Li Xiaoling. She is a daughter of a former regime leader. At the time, Li was the head of a group called CPA-FFC. The U.S. says the group is part of the United Front Work Department, Beijing's overseas propaganda arm. The United Front Work Department is a key organ under the CCP, and it has a big mission, coordinating thousands of groups that push the party's influence campaigns overseas. The department targets Western politicians and business leaders and works to sway them in Beijing's favor. Another important political body that pushes the United Front effort is CPPCC, and one of its members joined the Carnegie Endowment's Board of Trustees under William Burns' tenure. The member, Zhang Yichen, donated over $500,000 since he joined. Zhang is also the senior vice chair of a Beijing-based think tank. The leader of that think tank also works for the United Front Work Department. The Carnegie Endowment also received at least $200,000 in donations from the China-United States Exchange Foundation. The organization has also been accused of being a part of the United Front system. Burns is set to appear before a Senate confirmation hearing for his nomination. NTD reached out to him for comments but didn't get a response before airtime.
The Chinese regime is aiming to write the standards for the next generation of technologies. This with huge implications for global industries. NTD's Penny Zhou has more.
When the Chinese regime proposed its Made in China 2025 plan, it was accompanied by full-on state media propaganda campaigns. The ambitious plan aims to improve China's manufacturing power, but the U.S. believes the regime is doing so through massive state subsidies, unfair trade practices, and intellectual property theft. The Chinese proposal alarmed the West and triggered the wrath of former President Trump.
I said China 25 is very insulting because China 25 means in 2025 they're going to take over economically the world. I said that's not happening.
The plan was cited when Trump decided to impose massive tariffs on Chinese goods. So this time, the regime is keeping a much lower profile when it brought up the China Standards 2035 plan. But this new strategy is no less ambitious. Instead of playing the game by ignoring the international rules, now the Chinese regime wants to write the rules. The specifics of the plan are soon to be unveiled, but an official document published last year has made the goals clear. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, wants to set global standards for the next generation of technologies. That includes 5G internet, the Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence. Industry standards make sure products manufactured across the world can work seamlessly together. That includes everything from the size of light bulbs to how 5G data is transferred. But why is it a problem that the CCP wants to set the rules? One example may highlight what the CCP has in mind for the order of global technology. Last March, the Financial Times reported that Chinese telecom giant Huawei proposed to the United Nations an alternative form of the Internet. Huawei engineers argued that the free and open space that's owned by everyone is outdated, and the world needs a new global network model. Under the new model, service providers would have complete oversight and control over every single device connected to the Internet through their service. In China's case, the service providers are often state-owned companies that answer to the CCP. This top-down design of the Internet will give governments much more control over the flow of information, and Huawei believes China should be the one building it for the world. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Russia have previously applauded the Huawei proposal. Can the CCP succeed at making these rules? In fact, the regime is already making progress in influencing the international organizations that set the rules. Huawei's new internet proposal, for instance, was submitted to an UN agency called International Telecommunication Union. The Chinese regime now participates in 40% of the agency's study groups that set standards for future networks and security. That's versus a mere 5% from the United States. Communist China also hosts the 6th most secretaries in the world's largest standard-making body, the International Standard Organization, or ISO. According to a report by the Congressional U.S.-China Commission, the U.S. share has declined steadily since 2008, with China's share tripled during the same period. Organizations like the ISO and the International Electoral Technical Committees are full of Chinese nationals. Some even occupy key positions. The strategy is similar to how the CCP sends its officials to occupy other UN agencies to exert its influence in them. According to a Wall Street Journal report, in 2019, the Chinese regime tried to block the ISO from certifying a standard for typing Cantonese, the primary language used in Hong Kong. The language is a crucial part of Hong Kong's cultural identity, but Chinese delegates argued it's enough to have just one official language for all of China, and that's Mandarin Chinese. The U.S. has previously voiced concerns that the CCP might export authoritarian norms in setting standards for sensitive technologies like facial recognition and video surveillance. Beijing has already started promoting its standard to developing countries in Asia and Africa through its Belt and Road Initiative. The Wall Street Journal reported that Beijing would offer subsidies for the countries to use its standards and make it costly for them to switch to international standards. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
And the vice president of a North Carolina Teachers Association says he's a leader of a Marxist group. This comes as many worry about the growing threat of socialism in schools. NTD's Christina Kim has more on the story.
The vice president of a nearly 45,000-member teachers association is found to have close ties to a revolutionary socialist movement. Brian Prophet is a self-proclaimed young leader of the organization Liberation Road, a socialist organization that is dedicated to fighting for a social system where social wealth is controlled by people instead of the elite. The group claims they don't idolize revolutionaries, but singles out communist dictators Marx, Lenin, and Mao as figures from whom they draw inspiration. They also claim the right and the Republican Party are the main enemy. Liberation Road wants to defeat these enemy forces one by one. Journalist Alex Newman says the ties aren't surprising.
And unfortunately, the communist side has really gotten control of the education system. And this gentleman in North Carolina, again, is just the tip of the iceberg. He represents a much broader problem that doesn't happen just in North Carolina. This is all over the nation.
Prophet co-authored a, quote, struggle paper for Liberation Road, which lays out how to spread socialism in the United States and beyond. It specifically targets people in unions and schools as a vehicle for revolution. The Herald Sun reports in 2017, Prophet and a group of teachers posed for a photo that reenacted toppling a Confederate statue. The post was published online as a weekly morale builder, but was later taken down at the request of school district officials. They note the photo was taken after school hours. Not all teachers follow this ideology.
And I can't tell you how many teachers and school board members I've talked to that want to oppose this, but they don't know how. They're faced with a system where all of the incentives are designed to get the teachers to go along.
Newman says because communism and socialism shun spirituality, the concept of God-given rights doesn't exist. This is critical in understanding why the ideology violates human rights and seeks total control.
These really evil ideas. They have to be dressed up in a way that is appealing to everyday normal people. And so that's why we hear this rhetoric about equality, about justice. But when you boil it down, it is plain and simple tyranny.
He urges parents to pay attention to their children's educators and school systems. Newman encourages parents to explore alternative forms of education like homeschooling or private schools. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider. Thank you for watching. See you next time.